If you're getting value from working healthcare, I have a quick ask. Follow the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the podcast. That simple action helps more physicians and leaders find these conversations and better understand how our healthcare system actually works. And that matters because we can't fix what we don't understand.
You ready? You got me running.
I'm Meredith Hirsh, and this is Working Healthcare. I just interviewed Joe Luminiello. He is a fellow lifelong learner, just like me. He's the CEO of a company called RCG Intel. It's a company that focuses on data analytics and intelligence that provides healthcare organizations with insights into payer behavior, reimbursement patterns, and revenue cycle performance to improve financial outcomes. We talk about so much, including the CEO life and all about leadership. Joe has some great stories. He provides some amazing advice, and I think you'll really like the analogies that he uses. He provides some book reads and how to set reasonable expectations for your staff. We talk about the importance of always finding out the why behind something. And you also learn a little bit more about me, specifically the value that is most important to me. I know you'll enjoy this interview. Joe Luminiello, welcome to Working Healthcare.
Hi, Meredith. Thanks so much for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
You have been in the healthcare industry for a really long time. You were on the executive side working at Takeda, working at Abbott Laboratories, now AbbVie. Describe what got you into healthcare.
Well, just a little disclaimer. I didn't work for Abbott proper. I worked for a joint venture with Abbott and Takeda.
Okay.
Although Abbott, because we were in the States, Abbott did, managerially run the company. I learned so much from being under the tutelage of Abbott at the time. They're a great financially run company, great on execution. I got into healthcare kind of backhandedly, not intentionally. Many people say, I'm in this business because I want to help patients or whatever the thing is. I wish I had such lofty goals when I was younger, but I didn't. I was leaving the military, had virtually no transferable skills for the private sector, except leadership kind of things, which is fine, but it's hard to find a job and say I'm a leader, right? That's not a good skill. So at the time, Lee Iacocca was kind of famous for his book because he had raised money to revamp the Statue of Liberty. And I thought to myself, well, he's advocating sales, because if you're in sales, you need to know your product, you need to know the distribution, you need to know margins, you need to know so much, and then you can figure it out from there. And so I said, okay, I'll be in sales. That was my first default. My second default was, I don't want to be in sales where I'm just filling shelves like Frito-Lay in the store. I want to have intelligent conversations. That's number two. And number three was I was so naive that I thought, well, that leaves me lawyers and doctors. Like, I didn't think anybody else was intelligent, which is silly, but that's what I thought at the time. So I tried to apply for sales jobs in the pharma industry, and there was a recruiter out of Philadelphia. I want to say the company was Fox Morris. It's so long ago. But anyway, they specialize in placing junior military officers into industry. So they helped me out. Couple of operational interviews, didn't like them, didn't like the field, but I joined TAP in, I want to say 1988, roughly. So when you said really long time and had emphasis on really, you were right.
It was a long time. I want to go back to your military experience because you're an Army veteran. How do you think that played a role in your work ethic and your drive and even your decision to find a career path after the military?
It was extremely formative. I spent 5 years in the military, which is a little bit longer than the normal hitch, so to speak. I stayed an extra year. But I think about this a lot because after interviewing so many people, right, someone will say to me, I'm a really hard worker, or I'm really diligent, or whatever it is. And if I spend a lot of time as the interviewer poking around that and trying to figure out if it's true, first of all, I can kind of reach my own assessment, true or not. But normally it is true, and when it is true, I can normally trace it back to a significant life event or person. My soccer coach taught me this. My gymnastic coach, my dad was so instrumental. My mom taught me. So there's usually some grounding moment or experience that then sets the pathway forward. And when I think about myself, I really struggle to come up with that. When I started high school, I didn't even know what the rules of soccer were. And when I left high school, and I'll grant you it was a small school, but when I left, I was the captain of the team. When I went to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I won an ROTC scholarship. Well, I didn't know what I wanted to be in, but I got my first choice, which was field artillery. So there was this trend going into the military of overcoming, of working hard at practices and so forth, and ultimately succeeding on a small scale, on a small personal scale. The military kind of honed that, right? It turned it into a casual byproduct, into a kind of mode of operating as an adult, really. On day one, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility. On day one, I walk into the unit. It's not a lot of people, but there's 11 people looking at me like I know what I'm talking about, and I don't, right? Because I'm the newbie. And it's important to realize that and leverage, for everyone's benefit, but also your own, the expertise and talent of everyone around you. And so those 5 years were really formative. I still have stories that I teach people, my own kids, employees from those days, lessons that I learned from those days, concepts, I'll call them Joeisms. You probably have Meredithisms.
Momisms. They're momisms, Joe.
Mom and dadisms, for sure. Yeah. It's funny that you think, as you probably know about this point with a 25-year-old, you think nothing's getting in. And then one day they replay something back to you you said to them 7 years ago, and you're like, wow, they were listening. So that is good.
Occasionally, I think they forget to listen from the time they're about 14. And maybe at about 23, it starts to percolate in. But I do believe that there's about 9 years where you think, are they listening to anything? And do they really think they are the most knowledgeable person on earth?
They're listening. They're not incorporating, right? Like when they need it, when they're 30, they're going to be like, I remember what mom said to me. So anyway, the short answer is it was like honing the edge or knocking the chips off the block in the sculpture that is Joe.
Do you think that we should emulate other countries and the fact that we should require everybody to be in the military? And I think about that because in Israel, right, you're required to be in the military for, I think it's 3 years now. And if you look at Sweden, is it Sweden? Is it Switzerland? You are required to have military service for a year. Nobody should question like what I just stated on the number of years required, but there are countries that require a certain level of military service. And I was sharing with you that I have a couple of cousins who were in the military, one who's currently a Marine in the military. My grandfather was in the Army, but that was a time when a lot of people were going into the armed forces, especially if they didn't have a track to college right away. But we don't do that anymore. And I really think that having that experience in the military does make you grow up. It does give you critical thinking skills, and it helps you work as a team. And I think we've missed that a little bit with this generation.
Yeah, I think they work in other countries. The concept works in other countries. specifically because they are in other countries. Like, they're not Americans. And, for good or bad, we are what we are, right? The land of the free and so forth. I think that my experience in the military with individuals, it turns out most of the world does, in fact, work on the bell curve, right? So there's going to be people in the military, you're thinking to yourself, what are you even doing here? This is not good for you, my friend, whatever, And then there's people at the way other end, you're like, wow, you came in like a 17-year-old knucklehead and you're leaving a 22-year-old man or woman, right? You really grew here. It reminds me a lot of a book or a course that I've read. And when I tell someone at work, they're like, wow, was it worth it? Was it a good thing? And I always say, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So yeah, it was a great course for me, but I've seen companies pay for an MBA and that person comes back just as average as they were when they went in, right? So I'd hate to think that I think the people who opt into the military are more likely to be successful and honed when they get out than if we took everyone in. I think it's partly because we are in America, that we're just, we do what we do because we want to do it, and that's don't step on my toes kind of thing.
I like that perspective, and it reminds me why I really enjoy being the host of Working Healthcare, because just what you shared with me, it changed my point of view. And I've been having these conversations for about 2 years now, and I really have changed my perspective on so many different thought processes that I thought were so concrete and I knew, but I think it's about being open-minded. And it's why I use the slogan, you can't fix what you don't understand, because there are all of these people running around trying to fix things and give their opinions about things. And all they know is surface level. And you would have asked me 2 years ago, heck, I teach medical business management at a university, and I teach in executive education, and I lecture, and I speak with so many people who are leaders within our healthcare industry. I speak with our state legislature. I speak with our national Congress. And I'm still constantly changing my mind, and I'm still constantly digging in because I'm trying to learn more and more and more, which really brings me to my next question with you is, you were in the military, you have a quest for knowledge yourself, and you've used these skills to do what you're doing right now in healthcare. Describe what you're doing in healthcare, because you really are that PI investigator man who can ask all of these great questions.
Well, I'll do that in just a second, but I want to reinforce what you said about yourself and your quest for knowledge. I do believe, previously you and I talked a little bit about leadership and roles and titles and CEO and president stuff. In leadership, at least, and I think it's reflective in successful CEOs, is they are lifelong learners. They never stop. Never, right? Elon Musk never stops. I don't know, pick any, the lady just, I guess a year or two ago, retired from Coke, never stops. So I think that's a trait for successful people for sure, and leadership for sure.
And I appreciate that. I'll compare myself to Elon Musk, right? Just not the craziness, but hey, quest for learning.
Yeah, he's kind of on a whole different scale. But I mean to say, real leadership, going all the way back. Chicago. I lived near Chicago. It was the hub for cattle moving east, and the Swift family, the CEO, he was a lifelong learner, and he constantly changed the business model to fit the evolving times. And it's a longer story. Anyway, I'm just supporting what you said.
Well, thank you.
Answer, more directly to the answer to your question, I love the business of business. And I have been in healthcare. I have been on the manufacturing side, or the branded manufacturers, the AbbVies and those big companies. As an operator, I'm not a PhD or a doctor or anything like that, just a commercial operator. And I left a company in 2023 out in Seattle, a startup, and I was looking for what to do next. And a colleague called and said, there's this interesting niche in consulting in competitive intelligence. We should look at it and start a company together. And I was like, sounds great. Like, for me personally, I can't say this is all leaders, but I kind of, I probably need 60 to 70% of the data to decide. And then I wing it from there. I wing it from there. So when he said, he just explained it a little bit to me, I was like, well, that sounds great. Let's go. Let's start it. Let's help. So that's what we do. We provide competitive intelligence to primarily biopharma companies. It's kind of a simple business, which was one of the reasons I liked the business model. On the one hand, manufacturers want 365, 24/7 coverage on what's going on in their marketplace, which is interesting to me because on average, it takes 10 to 12 years to bring a drug to market. So you wonder why they need it overnight, but okay, that's fine. And then we also do, I call it ad hoc projects. They have a unique question that arises, and they need the why for the data. We provide the why in both cases. We'll get the data. The data is easy to get, but we provide the context and the why around that. You were talking about, we were talking about leadership and everything. I was out for a walk earlier today, and I had two main thoughts. One was these guys who created Medvi, MEDVIE, VI, sorry. They're the middleman for GLP-1s, right? There's a Nike of GLP-1s. So while I was out walking, I thought of a business idea to replicate what they're doing in another space, which Grok tells me it's okay. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
But I think that's what successful leaders do, right? I am constantly trying to find solutions or fixes to what I can't get, to problems that need to be solved. And there has to be an idea. My staff will say, oh my God, Meredith, I cannot find a solution for this. I'm like, then we have to create it. But if we're trying to figure out a solution to something, and I'll use the example, I really do think that healthcare is like the last industry that seems to be caught up with AI and all of the technology that's available now. We are so behind the times. We're like functioning in 1994. But I'll say we have to be able to pull this data from our patients. It has to be available in our EHR. And my staff are like, Meredith, we've asked everyone, it's not available. I'm like, then let us create it. There has to be a way to do it. But like you said, you're going for a walk and you're like, oh, well, we need a solution for this. And my mind is always processing how to find answers and how to find solutions and fix something. And that's why you ask really hard questions, because I know part of your goal in the company that you have is to ask those tough questions so we don't have another Elizabeth Holmes debacle.
Well, yeah. We talked a little bit about that before. I'm not convinced that people weren't aware. I think they were just happily ignorant because it was just like so obvious, right? We asked. I don't know if we'd asked tough questions. Perhaps they are for the recipient of that question. For us, it just feels normal. It just feels like if this data exists and you told me that thing over there, then the logical question is, what about this, right? And a lot of times, even in social context, people don't ask that final question because it's a bit uncomfortable and might put you off. The key for us is to be able to find those answers without putting people off so that 4 years from now, we can ask them a different question on a different subject and they're still, a reference for us.
Who are you asking the questions for? Are you asking the questions for investors, or are you asking questions for the government or for other companies that need to know more?
Yeah. At RCG, RCG Intel is a company. At our company, our clients are really the biopharma manufacturers, the people who are either already have a commercial asset or assets, or have something in the clinic. And so, the typical product life cycle is somewhere in some university, and you probably know this very well in your audience, some scientist says, wow, there's a process here, and there's a protein we've never characterized before. Isn't this great? What if we could target it and turn it on or off? That would fix some problem, right? Okay, so then you have this target protein, you have these molecules you're trying in a petri dish, 3 of them work, now you're going to try them in animal models, and 12 years later, I got a product. We can help people essentially from the animal model forward with questions about the marketplace, about the science. Dr. Smith was doing the same experiments. He stopped. Why did he stop? The data says he stopped, but that doesn't tell us anything. Why did he stop? Let's go find out. So that's the cycle of the product. We also have expertise in various parts of the business, whether it be the raw materials to make the drug, or to your point about investors, the business development people, or who are going to acquire something, or the CEO who has to present, at the quarterly meeting his results and why it's such a great company to invest in. So any critical question that a company has that drives strategy and or the forecast that they're a little unknowing about, we can try to help give the context around that. The second thing, which takes me back to the walk, I was thinking about when I was a sales manager. I don't know why, but I was thinking about, because we were meeting today. When I was a sales manager, technology was just coming on board, and the sales reps got these computers and they could look at data. They called it a cube. You could keep cutting it different ways. What is Dr. Smith doing? He's prescribing this, he's prescribing that. For those kinds of patients, meaning healthcare, their coverage, he does this. For Aetna, he does that. And for sales reps, it wasn't revolutionary, but it was like, wow, look at this. I have so much information now. So I would get in the car, and this happened for years. I would get in the car with a sales rep, and we'd make 6 to 8 calls that day. They would show me the data for each individual doctor. Each graph was different. Each trend line looked different. And they would make the exact same sales call. They would not change their behavior. Even though the doctor's objective data behavior was different, they would not change what they were saying. Now, there are some regulatory reasons for that. They're not allowed to say certain things. But, you can change your adjectives. You can, as long as you're not attributing attributes to the product that it doesn't exist, and the reason they didn't do it is because they had no idea why the data existed. Why is he or she doing that? And I would ask, though, I would come out and say, 5 calls in and say, Mary or Jim, it's been 5 sales calls. You show me all this great data. Why do you make the exact same sales call? And they look at me quizzically, and I said, it's because you don't know why. Now let's think about what we just saw in Dr. Smith's office. Let's think about what's going on in there, what kind of person he is, what kind of doctor she is, and let's try to figure out why they're doing what they're doing so that on your next sales call, you can be more effective.
Yeah, but you're strategic. But Joe, you're strategic in your thinking. And most people, I don't know. I don't know what most people will do. One of my biggest pet peeves and what I teach in customer service is you cannot say, that's our policy. Who the hell cares if that's our policy? How does this benefit or impact the patient or the client or whoever you are speaking with? It's not, it's our policy. Dig in deeper. Why is it our policy? Yeah. How does it impact? But that's how you and I are thinking. Do you think the majority of people think that way?
No, but I will say this. A sales rep has to. I've given you a tool that costs us $150,000, whatever, and I'm giving you data. And that data shows that each doctor is a little bit nuanced different, and some are widely different, and yet you're doing the exact same behavior. You got to be thinking to yourself, something's not right here. I'm not doing something right. I mean, that's salespersonship 101 is solving someone's problem. And the only way to do that is to know the why. But on a grander scale, at RCG, that's what we do. We solve the why for the companies. Here's the data. I can see the data, but why are they doing what they're doing? Why did they shift to a different supplier? why did they delay their submission to the FDA? They did. It's public knowledge, right? They have to report it to SEC. But why did they do it?
But it goes
So anyway,
along. It goes along though with the same thought of not everybody is the same. Doctors are not commodities. Salespeople are not commodities. And you know what? I love that we discussed previously. CEOs are obviously not commodities. And you brought up something that I thought was very interesting when we initially met, is that there are different types of CEOs, different people who are running companies, and it may not be good to have the CEO of said company for perpetuity, because you have an entrepreneurial CEO, which is really who I am to a degree in the way that you describe it. And there's also an operational entrepreneurial CEO. And then you have like somebody who is strict operations. Why would certain companies need a different type of CEO?
we could spend like 3 hours on this, Meredith.
I know, but I love the idea that you had with it because I've been reflecting on it since we discussed this initially.
All right, so let me try to break chicken and the egg, directly answer your question, and then teams or partnerships, right? So when we've talked before, I was thinking about it. You know, what comes first? Meredith's onboard personal characteristics that she will take with her no matter what job she has, or the CEO job? Well, obviously, it's all the talents that you have that make you amenable to a CEO job, right? The constant learning, the drive to find the answer, to find solutions. Perhaps there's also, you know, mentoring and leadership stuff with you and your staff, and a whole host of things. But if I made you the president instead of the CEO of another company because of all those talents you have, you'd probably do okay.
Oh, I always say that. You could throw me into any company, I'd figure it out, and I would be successful.
Right. So it is because of whatever you have on board, the nature part, plus your experiences, the nurture part, that yields us a successful CEO today, right? So that's the chicken or the egg thing, right? Now, the director answered your question is, you know, companies go through cycles, classically described as an S curve, right? Mm-hmm. We're starting out not so good. We're spending more money than we're making. Oh, look, we got legs. We're getting legs. This is going good. But then, you know, you get corporate hardening of the arteries and things are going slower and the growth isn't as great. And the trajectory starts to bend towards the south. Mm-hmm. And that's the S part. So if I'm a board member and I'm like, wow, Mary did really great starting this thing. She's a visionary. But right now, she has more ideas and has us going in 15 different directions when really we just need to be successful in 2. So we need Mary to either adjust herself to the growth operational phase, or we need a new CEO, right? Because we need an operator now. We need someone to turn $1 million into 50. Mm-hmm. And we can't keep spending money, you know, which amazes me about the Tesla empire, right? Like they have such diverse businesses, which he's now bringing under one umbrella, but like it's so crazy to have things spinning off like that. And then there's the S curve at the top is like, hey, you know, Bob did a good job. He took over from Mary, but we need another Mary type because we need to reinvent ourselves because we're not doing so well, right? Like we need to rethink what we're doing. We need to rebrand or acquire or divest or something, but this isn't going well anymore. And an operator isn't doing it for us. We need someone else. So I think the company, depending on where they are in their life cycle, needs different kinds of CEOs. That doesn't mean they come and go. A CEO can have these kind of multiple personalities, and Mary, if she could scale, would be fine. You know, let the entrepreneur stay and grow with the company she created.
And that's where I'm at right now. I was the entrepreneur, and I'm always thinking of different ancillaries to add, different models where we can pivot and move and adapt because healthcare is always changing. But we also need some consistency. So a little over a year ago, I brought in an executive director. Our company is certainly not large enough to bring in two CEOs, but I do have somebody who is here to be the operational component so that I can function on the visionary work. And then she tries to rein me in that I am going to give everybody a heart attack for giving them 500 new ideas to go after.
So perhaps I should be doing the interview and you should be on the side, because you just hit upon the third thing I was going to say, which is teams, right? Like a complementary team. If I'm the operator and I need someone a little bit crazy who's willing to take risks and start new ideas, I should go hire that. And the inverse is true, right? So all kinds of famous examples in and out of business of a good combo team working well together.
When you hire these other people to complement you, because that really is the strength of a leader, getting people and hiring people who complement you. And you have to put the ego out of the way. Like, I love working with high-level people because I know that I'm not the smartest one in the room, but I know who to ask, which can make me the smartest one, even if I don't know the answer. But how do you hold people accountable then? How do you hold your leadership team accountable? You've worked for some amazing organizations, and that's where I struggle sometimes.
Yeah, so earlier I quickly mentioned, Meredithisms and Joeisms. So just a couple quick Joeisms. One is, if I can, and I almost always can, I always hire people who are smarter than me. Always. Second one is, I'm not interested in being correct. I'm interested in having the correct answer. Mm-hmm. But that means, especially when there's a hierarchical titling thing, you've got to work to let them know it's okay to tell the CEO he or she has no clothes, right? Like, hey, Joe, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, just so you know. Okay, fine. But what's the right answer, right? Like, let's get to that. And then the third thing is the accountability that you're talking about. Culture. I always say culture happens whether you like it or not. So if you don't include culture as part of your strategic focus, it will evolve naturally by the way people behave every single day and interact. And you'll wake up one day and you go, wow, how did we turn into this? This is not what we envisioned when we started. Well, it's because you didn't really put effort into it. And part of that effort, if you have an accountability ethos as a company, if we've all agreed, you got to put effort into it in tiny little ways all the time, so they know it's safe. They know it's okay to make a mistake, not the same mistake more than once, but make a mistake. It's okay to be honest. It's okay. I once, by way of an example, I once worked for a guy who's. I said to someone, "Oh, you had a conversation with him?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "What was it like?" He said, "It was like talking to a laser beam." So, like, he's extremely focused, right? And we were launching some products, and I was leading the team, the cross-functional team, to launch multiple products in a single year. And the corporate culture was a bit laissez-faire. And it's hard to be crisp on 4 executions in 1 year when you're not kind of keeping time and you're not really getting the projects done. And so one day, I can't remember why, we had a senior leadership meeting with the cross-functional team. I was like 5 minutes late. And this person, my friend, and I was working for him at the time, kind of read me the riot act in front of everybody. And I just took it and it was fine. Like, I was actually kind of smiling on the inside. So the meeting's over and everything. He goes to his office. I rush right in and I said to him, "That was fantastic. They now know that even the boss's flunky better be on time." Right? Now I have authority, like, to call everybody else out on, "Hey, where's the project you told me was going to be here on Friday? How come you're late?" Yada, yada, right? But by him doing that, and we didn't coordinate it, but by him doing that, it set the tone. And I said to him, now we need to think about what other traits we need to change in the culture. And in a month, you can yell at me for that too, whatever that is. Let's just do it prospectively this time, not retrospectively. So as the CEO, as the leader, whether it's and it doesn't have to be the CEO. Anyone in a leadership function, in my opinion, is everybody's in a leadership function, but that's just me. You have to work at culture. And if accountability is part of your culture, you got to find ways to reinforce it. And when needed, bring the hammer down a little bit for bad behavior in a safe way, because you don't want them hiding. No one ever tells the CEO the truth. They tell their version of the truth. They're not lying to you, but the same data point presented to you by the head of manufacturing versus the head of sales has different verbs and nuance in it, right? Like they're telling you the same story, but so no one ever tells you the truth. So if you want to hold people accountable and yet still get the truth, you kind of have to have a velvet hammer. Like you can't be too rough with them in the beginning, but in the end, wrong is wrong, and that's got to be dealt with. But it's a constant thing. Culture's a constant thing.
And how do you set the reasonable expectations for the culture that you're trying to build within your company?
So yeah, there are plenty of textbooks on it, and the one that I used with our team for this company is called Traction, and it worked fine because we're smaller and everything, and it goes from the high lofty goals down to weekly meetings, how to get it all aligned, right? But I hearkened back to something I learned soon after I left the military in my first managerial job in the private sector. And it was called the GEL formula, GEL, like gelatin, right? Bringing things together. The G is good finding. Find the good that someone does, tell them, and then just walk away, right? I don't believe in a poop sandwich. I don't believe you can say to someone, that was really good, but that wasn't so good. But hey, don't forget you did it really good. Because the only thing they're going to remember is the middle, right? They're just going to say, well, Meredith just yelled at me or Joe just yelled at me. So compliment them and say, hey, Meredith, you do these interviews really, really well. I just wanted to let you know. Find the good.
And don't add a but.
And don't add a but. Anything that's wrong that Meredith's doing or Joe is doing, you should handle, first of all, if it's blatantly wrong or illegal, you just stop it, right? But if it's a behavioral thing, I like to put a trend together. Like, if Joe's late for work one day, okay, whatever. If he's late 1 month and then another month, okay, whatever. But if Joe's late all the time, now I got a trend, right? Now I have a behavioral thing that I want to correct. And it may not be, hey, Joe, you're late. One more time and you're out of here. It may be, hey, Joe, you used to be on time, rock steady. You've been late lately. What's going on? Can I help you with it? Like if you've got to take the kids to school, just come in later and stay a little bit later. Like we'll you're a great employee. We'll figure it out. So
and I like what you said about that, and I just wanted to make an emphasis on it because I have some rising leaders who take it so personally that somebody is late. And I have said similar to what you've said. I promise you that this employee does not wake up every morning and say, I'm going to piss my manager off. I'm going to tick him off or tick her off and be late. Exactly. They don't do that. There is something that is impeding the person to be able to show up on time. So yes, it might be taking the kids to school. And that actually happened with one of my nurse practitioners. He was always on time. And all of a sudden, he's late. And when you just broach the subject, and he's like, well, now I'm in charge of carpool or drop off for elementary school because my wife got a new job and she's having to drive so much further and she does pickup. I'm like, oh, we can work on that.
Yeah. And that, again, going back to culture, that the way you handle that reinforces accountability. And they know the next person who has that change, they can come to whoever's in charge and say, look, my wife's got this new job or my husband does. I need to adjust. What do you think? Yeah, let's work on your hours or, whatever it is. Going back to Jill for just a second, the important thing about finding the good in someone is not that they do it good, but finding out why and then leveraging it, right? So totally made up, right, is, hey, Meredith, you're really good at these interviews. You're a great communicator. And then, a day later, a week later, why is that? Well, I went to school for communications, or I've worked hard at it and whatever. And you say, Meredith, Jim answers the phone with patients. He's not a great communicator. Could you work with him and get him, a little bit up to snuff so our patients have a better experience when they call in? Now I've got Meredith doing one thing good. Now I got her fixing Jim or Bob over at the phone. Now he's going to do something good. And meanwhile, he already does something good. And I told him he did that good. He's really organized. And I'm going to take his organization skills and I'm going to get him to go help Frank over there in supply. So the good finding in the gel formula is a multiplicative, right? The E is expectations. And the crazy thing about, and by the way, this is a conversation, expectations is a conversation you definitely have with people. But the most interesting thing is, it's what, Meredith, as my employee, what are your expectations of me? Tell me what we start the conversation with Meredith's expectations of her boss. And she'll tell me whatever they are, and that's fine. Usually they're fine, right? And then I get to share my expectations of Meredith, the employee. And we kind of verbally shake hands and we agree that's the table. That's the table we're working on. And if either one of us doesn't pull through, we each have the right to call them on it, right? Like, you have the right to say, Joe, you told me you were going to be open and honest, and this has been, on your heart for a month, and you didn't come tell me, and now it's a bad thing, right? So, hey, yeah, that's my fault. I didn't keep my word. So expectations is a two-way street. And the last thing is loyalty. And loyalty is multi-tiered, and it starts with loyalty to yourself, the employee, right? I can't be a great sales rep if I'm 25 years old and staying out all night and coming home at 3 a.m. and expect to go to work at 8 o'clock and make a sale, right? I can't be a good employee if I'm the tech in the X-ray room and I'm not doing my continuing medical education and I'm not reading the book I'm supposed to, So loyalty to yourself and to your family. It's your job to maintain your job for yourself and your family, and do whatever you need to do that. And don't harm yourself. I mean, with drugs and alcohol and stuff, any other dependency, gambling, whatever. Loyalty to the company, right? Like, don't be bad mouthing us and whatever. Our loyalty to you is the third tier. Like, hey, sometimes people don't perform well, mostly for two reasons. One is they can't or they won't. The people who won't get to leave and go find, but if you can't, maybe it's because we didn't explain it to you. We didn't fully explain the job responsibility. If you can't, maybe because we didn't give you enough training, right? But after I eliminate all the can'ts, why you can't do it, it becomes a won't do it. And won't do it in our company, right? Like, so go somewhere else. Now, there are circumstances like you can't do it because, I don't know why, trying to think, maybe we hired you in as an entry-level admin and you've grown with the company and everything's going great. And now we want to give you this technical job. And honestly, with your high school education, you can't, right? You just literally can't.
So I thought something was very interesting, and I had that experience. I hired a physician assistant who could not type. He could not type. I don't understand how you work in an electronic health record system, or you even work in 2025, because it was last year, and you don't even know how to type on a computer.
Right. How they got here, it's often amazing. It's like, really, you're that, and you couldn't do this?
I'm still in shock, and it was like 8 months ago. I'm still baffled by the experience. I offered a Mavis Beacon typing course. I didn't know what else to do. I thought, you're actually younger than me, and you don't know how to type. That baffles me.
Yeah, you solve for the can't, right? But sometimes there's just whatever it is, they just literally can't. But if they're a great employee, maybe there's another place in the organization we can put you, which is satisfying to you, still has your job progression, you're still contributing to us, and we still love you, right? Like it's a great win.
Maybe. I don't know if that always works, but I love the loyalty aspect because to me, that is my number one value is loyalty.
Yeah.
I will be good and kind and loyal to you, but it has to be reciprocal.
Right. But and everyone should know that, right? Everyone walking around should know that's part of Meredith's MO. That's part of the culture. That's part of the, again, so many people do not pay attention to culture and then wonder why their company is the way it is.
It's funny because we have our 10 core values written on a poster all around the office. We have it in our break room. I have it in my office. Our executive director has it in her office. It's scattered throughout. And occasionally we get an employee who will say, well, I don't understand why this is relevant. I don't understand why we need to read this or even know our core values. And I'm thinking, maybe you just want to clock in and clock out, but I don't see you getting into a higher level position. And I don't know, where do people exist that I can hire who, yes, my goal is to live our core values, but I also have to express them and make sure that people know what we're trying to achieve. Because if you don't have a goal set and you don't express that goal, how does anybody around you know where you're headed?
Yeah. Meredith, how many levels would you say you have in the organization? Like how many people from the newest employee to you, or how many levels do you think?
4.
4. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. I mean, we're only about 58 employees. So we have about 4 levels. If I'm at the top or I'm parallel with my husband, he and I started the practice together. He doesn't have anybody report to him directly, but my executive director reports to me directly. And then we have a leadership team, and she oversees a certain number of people. Now, I do have meetings every week or every month with various leadership team members, depending on what they do. But we have an open form of communication always. Beneath them is typically a team lead. And then we have our various staff members. But
and
what
you're all together?
Yes, in different teams, whether they're part of our administrative team or our clinical team or our business team, which would be principal care management and the billing side. But what I find challenging right now is finding those middle level people. We have hired so many people recently, and they don't want to go up to the next level. So I have a lot of people who want to be in a leadership role, but want to jump from being employed for 3 months to a leadership role. And they don't have the attitude or the aptitude. I think they just want the money. But we're having a difficult time hiring people who want to be in leadership. How do you recruit for those people?
Recruiting, again, another 3 hours on recruiting we could do. So.
I ask good questions. Come on, Joe.
That's funny. So like everything else in life, what you really want, you never truly get. You have to compromise.
Thanks.
Well, you got to compromise something, right? Because no one's the complete total package. And I think clarity, and I don't know what your hiring, interviewing process is, but clarity around what you're looking for and truly what those traits look like. It's easy, relative. It's easier to find out if someone can type than it is to find out if they have integrity. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's hard to interview for those questions. It's hard to poke at, are you honest? Nah, I'm not honest. So, so it's difficult. But I would say that if you have a good idea of what this leadership role looks like, not in skill set, but in characteristics like we talked about Meredith earlier, right? If you know what that looks like, then you should try to interview for that in a younger person who can grow into it. But again, a lot of those things are hard to poke at. if you want someone who's proactive and takes the initiative, you can certainly ask, give me an example in your life where you took the initiative or were proactive for a problem. You could do that. Hopefully you'll get an interview answer, right? Hopefully they're skillful enough to at least have that. But if you keep clawing back at that, knowing what you're looking for in the future and have that clearly defined for yourself and whoever else is interviewing, then you can triangulate and say, well, I wasn't happy with, again, assuming proactive is one of your things, I wasn't happy with Jim's answer about proactive. And two other people who interviewed Jim are like, no, I thought he hit it out of the park. Was it the same example or different examples, right? Because many a time I'm like, yeah, I asked him this question and he told me about his dog. I don't understand that. And I'm talking to people I'm coordinating with about this candidate, and they're like, no, they told me about the business they started when they were in college because their dad died and he had to pay for college. It's like, well, I wish he had said that to me. Like, the dog answer didn't help me at all. So if you know what you're looking for and you're triangulating, it gives you a better chance. But clarity at the top, meaning clarity at the definition of what you're looking for, helps. It doesn't assure it. I probably, 60, 70% of the time, I get it right. I don't.
That's why you're doing the RCG Intel. So I want to wrap up and ask you a caveat to my final question, which is typically if you could create change.
Is that technically two questions?
No,
okay.
I'm going to ask you just one, because I'm not going to ask you the typical question, which is if you could create one change within the American healthcare system, what would it be? But I want to ask more about the RCG Intel. What change do you hope to create within our American healthcare system with the company that you just founded?
Well, I don't have so much ego to think I can change the whole system, but I do hope that for our clients, and, think about our totally making this up there, not our client, but a big company like GSK or AbbVie, they have multiple product lines, multiple disease states, multiple on that product timeline I talked about at multiple stages, right? There's a lot of things you can help with, all the way down to, 10 people in an office in Miami with a brand new product that's about to go into the FDA, right? Tiny compared to, I just hope that I can help people make better educated decisions. I can't help the decision that they finally make because they're going to make it. And they may have other imperatives that are pushing on that decision-making that I'm not aware of, political without, financial, all kinds of things. But I just hope that the information that we can provide them can help leadership make better decisions, whatever their decision is. I can't rank order the goodness, if you will, of their decision. And it's a modest goal. When we set up the company, and we were just talking about this yesterday as a full company, we focus on human intelligence. We do the data, but the only way to get the context and the why we talked about is to talk to humans. You can't talk to a spreadsheet. So we hang our hat on human intelligence, but it goes deeper than that. The number one thing that we decided we wanted to do as a company was help our immediate point of contact in our clients be successful, right? So whoever's dealing with us on the client side, we want them to shine in front of their boss and their peers, because a lot of the data that they're presenting, maybe not directly, but through the hierarchy, goes to the board, goes to the senior VP, goes to the chief commercial or whoever, and we want them to shine. That's our first imperative. The second one is we want to hire people that we like, and we want to hire people that can both be responsible, but have the authority to do things, and we want them to shine.
Joe Luminiello, thank you for joining me on Working Healthcare. If this conversation hit home or made you think a little differently, don't keep it to yourself. Share the episode, tag a friend, or post about it on social media. Connect with me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going in between episodes. If you've got a question, an episode idea, or someone you think I should feature, send me a note at meredithhirsh.com. Thank you all for the 5-star reviews. They help more listeners find the show. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Tune in weekly as we explore the inner workings of healthcare, because you can't fix what you don't understand.